What happens when your mining run, a pirate ambush, and an org's trade fleet actually change the price of fuel across an entire star system? That's not science fiction. That's the economy Star Citizen is trying to build. Behind the ships and dogfights lies something more fundamental: the economy. CIG calls it StarSim, simulation meant to manage supply, demand, and labor across the verse. Decides fuel prices at every major location, which missions appear on your mobiGlas, and even how many pirates you'll meet on a risky run. Today we'll break down how it's meant to work, compare it to EVE, WoW, and Elite, and pull lessons for sustaining a virtual economy at scale. Because whether you're a miner, a hauler, or a bounty hunter, economy is the connective tissue of Star Citizen, and if it breaks, the entire game breaks with it. When we talk about economies in MMOs, there are generally two design philosophies. The first is what you'd call table-driven. Prices, loot tables, and rewards are fixed by developers, and the player experience is curated around those constraints. Think of World of Warcraft's auction house at launch, where vendor prices never budged. Think of World of Warcraft's auction house at launch, where vendor prices never budged. The system was predictable, but it didn't respond to how players actually behaved. In WoW's early days, players recalled that entire servers' copper ore was bought up to corner the low-level market. Testament to how players will exploit even the smallest economic edges. Imagine being a newbie with your first mining pick, only to find Chad the Copper Baron owns every rock in Elwyn Forest. The second is simulation-driven. Here, the game attempts to mirror supply and demand. Prices rise when goods are scarce, and they fall when players oversupply the market. EVE Online is the clearest example. Every ship, module, and mineral is either produced or consumed by players, with CCP intervening through taxes, insurance, and balance tweaks. Blade Dangerous sits somewhere in the middle, with its background simulation shifting mission boards and trade profits based on local conditions. Both models have strengths. Table-driven economies are easy to balance, but feel artificial. Simulation-driven economies are immersive and unpredictable, but they require constant oversight to avoid collapse. Star Citizen is attempting the latter, but with a twist. It wants to simulate not just player activity, but entire populations of NPCs that mine, haul, buy, and consume alongside us. The heart of Star Citizen's economic vision is something called StarSim. It's not just a system for pricing commodities, it's an entire simulation layer designed to breathe life into the verse. The backbone of this system are Quanta, ultra-lightweight AI agents that represent roles within the verse, from miners, haulers, pirates, security patrols, even shopkeepers, and consumers. They aren't characters you'll ever see walking around a station. Instead, they exist in the background, working tirelessly to simulate an economy that feels alive. Quanta aren't real NPCs, they're ghost employees. Invisible workers who mine, haul, and die in the background. And disturbingly, they might still have more autonomy than warehouse staff at Amazon, who've spent years fighting grueling quotas, denied breaks, and union crackdowns. But hey, at least Quanta don't exactly have a supervisor breathing down their neck because they went a second over their 15-minute break. Allegedly. But when Quanta activity gets close to the player environment, it hands off to a virtual AI, which translates those background actions into things that you can actually interact with, such as missions to deliver cargo after a shortage, a pirate ambush triggered by rising unlawful activity, or fluctuating prices at a spaceport. Finally, when you're face-to-face, Subsumption AI takes over, giving you the NPC bartender or pirate you directly engaged with. On the developer side, CIG built a tool called Quasar to monitor and adjust this ecosystem in real time. Now, right now, none of this is being used in the game, but the plan is for everything from missions to dynamic events to eventually flow from this system. The ambition is staggering. StarSim should eventually run hundreds of thousands of Quanta per system, maybe even millions. The dream is a universe that feels alive whether players are present or not, with every activity, trade, piracy, exploration, feeding back into the economy dynamically. So how does this simulation connect to actual gameplay? This is done through pipelines and supply chains. Every profession in Star Citizen is designed to fit into a broader loop. Miners extract ore, refiners turn it into usable materials, and haulers move those materials to manufacturers. Factories produce goods, which flow into shops, which are then consumed by players and NPCs alike. Along the way, fuel and repair services keep the machinery running, while salvage feeds raw resources back into the cycle. But this loop won't stop at shops. Crafting is expected to become a major extension of the economy, allowing players to turn refined resources into weapons, armor, ship components, and even ships. Instead of selling ore at the nearest terminal, an ore might choose to refine it, craft high-demand ship parts, and sell those directly on the market. That deepens economic complexity while creating additional sinks for raw materials. The same goes for base building. Constructing and maintaining outposts will require vast quantities of resources, building materials, fuel for reactors, and replacement parts for defenses. Once bases persist across the verse, they'll act as long-term demand anchors, pulling currency and resources out of circulation while offering new logistical challenges. In theory, this creates an economy that isn't just a backdrop, but the core connective tissue of the entire game. Every activity contributes to or draws from the same economic bloodstream. And because StarSim tracks NPC activity alongside players, the system should never stall completely, even in low population areas. EVE Online is still the gold standard for a player-driven economy. Nearly every ship, weapon, and piece of ammunition is produced by players from mined or salvaged resources. The developers at CCP act less like dungeon masters and more like central bankers, using levers such as insurance payouts, production taxes, and scarcity phases to manage inflation and resource hoarding. At its peak, EVE published detailed monthly economic reports that tracked money supply, mineral prices, and trade volumes, providing players with macroeconomic transparency few games dared to offer. But EVE also highlights the risks. Cartels and alliances routinely corner markets, manipulating supply chains to control strategic commodities. Interventions like the era of scarcity in 2020 were deeply unpopular, but necessary to stabilize runaway production. Now, the lesson for Star Citizen is clear. Without transparent reporting and developer-managed sinks, a simulation-driven economy can quickly spiral out of control. If StarSim is to succeed, CIG must treat economic oversight as a living responsibility, not a set-and-forget system. World of Warcraft's economy began as a simple gold grind, but over time it ballooned into a system plagued by botting and inflation. Blizzard's solution was the WoW token, essentially legalizing real money trading by letting players purchase game time with gold. Price floats automatically based on supply and demand, creating a pressure valve for the economy. WoW also introduced massive gold sinks, like the 5 million gold Brutosaur mount, designed to pull excess currency out of circulation. The lesson here is less about realism and more about control mechanisms. If Star Citizen wants long-term stability, it must create sinks that players actually want to spend on, rather than punitive taxes that feel like punishment. Elite Dangerous runs on what's called the background simulation. Every station and faction tracks supply, demand, and political state. When players trade, smuggle, or fight, they nudge the balance of power, which in turn affects commodity prices and mission availability. The brilliance of the BGS is that it makes economic participation feel impactful, but it also has cracks. Organized player groups learn to game the system, forcing desired states like war or boom for profit. Star Citizen can learn two things here. First, tie economic actions to meaningful outcomes, like system scarcity or faction control. Second, ensure the triggers for those outcomes can't be easily exploited. And just like EVE's industry or WoW's professions stabilize resource flows, Star Citizen's crafting and base building could serve that role. Ambition is one thing, resilience is another. StarSim's economy faces several potential failure modes if it's not carefully managed. The most obvious is inflation. Right now, most money enters the system through mission rewards and bounties. If sinks like repairs, insurance, and fuel remain too cheap, currency supply will outpace removal, leading to runaway prices. The reverse deflation is also a risk if sinks are too aggressive, discouraging players from engaging in certain loops. Another danger is cartel behavior. Large organizations may dominate choke points in supply chains, monopolizing critical goods or hauling routes. If StarSim's Quanta respond too slowly, players could effectively strangle entire markets. Now, CIG do claim that players will not be able to control the market like that, but if they don't have any control points ready to go, then they will undoubtedly abuse that. There also might be the small issue of arbitrage loops, which currently exist in the game. If local prices take too long to update, players will farm predictable buy low, sell high routes until the margins collapse. At that point, many players will resort to using spreadsheets. And when I say spreadsheets, I don't mean a cute little Excel chart. I mean 20-tab monstrosities that look like the tax return your uncle swears he totally understands right before the IRS shows up. In EVE, these spreadsheets weren't homework. They were literal artillery. And if dynamic events are tied to simple thresholds like a shortage automatically spawning high-paying rescue missions, players will inevitably manipulate conditions to force those profitable states. Finally, there's the problem of NPC crowd-out. If quantum miners and haulers instantly fill every shortage, players won't have room to make meaningful profit. But if quanta are too sluggish, shelves go empty, and the simulation feels broken. Striking the right pace of reaction will be one of the hardest balancing acts for CIG. Now, this whole system is supposed to be dynamic, but until we see it, we can only go off of what they tell us. So how can CIG steer this economy without breaking immersion? The answer is in design levers, adjustable systems that can be fine-tuned in real time. One lever is adaptive sinks. Insurance, fuel, and repairs could scale with tonnage, distance, or even crime rating, ensuring costs feel logistical while pulling currency back into the void. Another is throughput caps at stations, which mimic real-world port congestion and prevent infinite unloading. Crafting itself can function as a soft sink. By converting raw resources into weapons, armor, and components, players are constantly reinvesting wealth instead of hoarding currency. As blueprints and item durability evolve, crafting can be tuned to absorb surplus materials and stabilize the market. Base building provides an even stronger lever. Constructing and sustaining bases should require continuous upkeep. From power, defenses, medical facilities, landing pads, and reactors, all consuming resources regularly. That ensures orgs can't stockpile wealth indefinitely without channeling it into maintenance and protection. Ultimately, CIG doesn't need perfect realism. They need our sinks and systems that make the economy sustainable, engaging, and flexible as the verse grows. While much of StarSim is still under the hood, players have noticed small adjustments. Fuel and repair costs have been tweaked multiple times. But so far, these changes feel more like surface-level balancing than true economic evolution. They don't carry major or lasting implications, and many in the community view them as temporary fixes rather than foundational progress. The mission system, meanwhile, shows both progress and the gap still to be closed. It works reasonably well today, offering combat, cargo, and bounty contracts, plus other mission types. But it doesn't yet connect to StarSim in a meaningful way. Missions don't scale with economic conditions, shortages, or security levels, and payouts remain mostly static. And as I mentioned earlier, StarSim is designed to eventually let Quanta respond dynamically to our actions, keeping the system balanced instead of collapsing into chaos. So can a virtual economy at this scale really function? The short answer is not yet, but maybe. On paper, StarSim could set a new standard for emergent player-influenced economies. In practice, the changes players see today, such as fuel prices, repair costs, and mission payouts, feel mostly hollow. They're tweaks without long-term consequences. And while the mission system functions, it hasn't yet been meaningfully integrated with StarSim to reflect economic conditions. The vision is ambitious, and if CIG can fully integrate crafting, base building, and meaningful resource sinks, then the system might finally begin to match the scale of its promise. Until then, the economy exists more as a blueprint than a functioning simulation, an idea waiting for its true test. So what do you think? Can Star Citizen's economy really scale to match its ambition, or is it destined to collapse under its own complexity? I'd love to hear your perspectives in the comments, especially if you've managed economies in games like EVE, WoW, or Elite. If you enjoy deep dives like this, consider becoming a channel member. Members get access to behind-the-scenes updates, exclusive Discord channels, shoutouts in every video, and more. Your support directly helps me keep producing long-form content like this and diving into the systems that will shape Earth. And if you want to go deeper, check out my video on crafting and base building in Star Citizen. Two systems that could completely reshape the economy by creating long-term sinks, new supply chains, and whole new markets. Understanding those mechanics is just as important as grasping the foundation of StarSim, because together, they'll decide whether this economy thrives or collapses. As always, thanks for watching. Fly safe, pilots, and I'll see you in the verse. Havoc out.